Welcome to the Success Mindset Podcast, where we empower you to unlock your full potential and achieve greatness. Join us as we explore the transformative power of your mindset and uncover the strategies that will help you conquer your goals and create the life that you've always dreamed of. So buckle up, get inspired, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Success Mindset Podcast, where we talk about the way you think, the way you lead, and the way that you follow through when life and business put pressure on you. Today I want to talk about protecting your leadership energy. And when I say leadership energy, I'm not just talking about being tired or needing a break or needing another cup of coffee. I'm talking about the mental, emotional, and spiritual capacity that it takes to keep showing up well. Because you can care about your work and still feel drained by it. You can know what needs to be done and still not have the internal energy to do it well. You can love leading people and still catch yourself getting short and distracted or impatient or avoidant when your capacity gets low. And so a lot of leaders, they don't realize that they're running low until they start leading differently. And that's the part worth paying attention to. So you might still be answering emails and going to meetings and handling problems or following up with people and getting things done. And from the outside, everything might look functional, but internally, you might still be carrying more than people can see. And so you're thinking about the customer waiting on an answer, the employee who needs direction, or the decision that you've been putting off, or maybe even the money that needs to come in and the family thing that still needs attention, or even the goals that you're trying to hit. And so then the day starts and everything else piles on. That kind of pressure can sneak into your leadership if you don't pay attention to it. And so it shows up in small ways at first. Your tone gets sharper. Your patience gets thinner. You start avoiding the conversation because you don't feel like you have the energy for it. You delay a decision, right? Not because you don't care, but because your mind feels too crowded to deal with it clearly. And so that's why protecting your leadership energy is not selfish. It's part of responsible leadership. The primary grit pillar here that we're talking about is intentional execution. Because this isn't just about feeling better, it's about learning how to act with clarity and consistency instead of letting pressure run the day. Relentless mindset rewiring supports that because a lot of the energy that we lose doesn't come from the work itself, it comes from the way that we think about the work. It comes from mental replay, it comes from overthinking, it comes from the belief that everything depends on us, and it comes from carrying things silently instead of addressing them clearly. So let's talk about the first idea. Leadership energy is a capacity issue before it becomes a performance issue. Most leaders, they notice the performance problem first. They notice that they're not following through like they said that they would. They notice that they're not as sharp in conversations. They notice that they're procrastinating on something that they usually would handle. And so they also notice that they're more reactive than they want to be. And then they try to fix it by putting more pressure on themselves. Saying stuff like, I just need to get it together. Or they make another list, or they push harder. They promise themselves this week will be different. And so sometimes structure helps, planning helps, right? A better system helps. But if the real issue is capacity, more pressure is not going to solve it. It's like seeing your phone battery at 3% and deciding the solution is to open more apps. You might get more activity for a moment, but you're draining what's left even faster. And so a lot of leaders are trying to run their business or lead their people, serve their customers, manage their family, and grow personally on 3% internal battery. And then they wonder why everything feels heavier than it should. When your capacity is healthy, you think clearer, you communicate better, you handle conflict without going defensive. You can stay more patient when somebody brings you a problem, and you can make decisions from wisdom instead of pressure. But when your capacity is low, even normal things start feeling irritating. A simple question feels like an interruption. A small mistake feels personal. A conversation that you need to have feels exhausting before it even starts. And so that's when you have to slow down and ask, is this really the problem, or am I trying to lead from a drained place? That question can save you from misreading the moment. And so now let's take a deeper step. Unprotected energy turns into reactive leadership. Nobody wakes up and says, today I think I'm going to be impatient or distracted or unclear. and slightly irritated with everybody who needs something from me. At least I hope not. Reactive leadership usually sneaks in. It starts with too much pressure and not enough pause, too much noise and not enough clarity, too much responsibility and not enough internal reset. Then something small happens and your response is bigger than the moment. An employee asks a question and you feel irritated because it feels like they should have already known that. A customer needs something and you feel frustrated because you already have 12 other things waiting. Or a decision needs to be made, but because you've been carrying too much mentally, you rush it just to get relief, or you delay it again because you don't want to think about it. And so that's why I use this line a lot. Pressure doesn't create your patterns, it reveals them. Pressure shows you what's already been happening internally. If your mind has been crowded, pressure reveals it. If resentment has been building, pressure reveals it. Right? If avoidance has been running the show, pressure reveals it. And so that's where relentless mindset rewiring becomes practical. The goal is not simply to say, stop reacting. Most people already know that they shouldn't, react poorly. They know that they shouldn't snap or avoid or over control or let one frustrating moment shape the whole day. The deeper question is, what thought pattern is creating this reaction? Maybe the thought is, I shouldn't have to deal with this. That usually creates irritation. Maybe the thought is, if I don't handle this myself, it won't get done right. That creates control and exhaustion. Or maybe the thought is, I don't have time to slow down. That creates rushed decisions and poor communication. Your thinking patterns eventually become your leadership patterns. And so, if the same thought keeps producing the same behavior and the same behavior keeps producing the same result, then you have to challenge the thought. Let me give you a simple example. Maybe a manager knows that there's a conversation that they need to have with someone on their team. And it's not a terrible conversation, it's just uncomfortable. Maybe there's a performance issue. Maybe the same detail keeps getting missed. Or maybe a standard has gotten blurry. And so the manager keeps putting it off. On the surface, it looks like they're avoiding the conversation. And underneath that, there's usually a thought pattern. What if they take it wrong? Or what if it gets awkward? Or what if I don't say it right? Those thoughts, they sound cautious, but they create a bigger problem. And so while the manager waits, the frustration grows and the team sees the inconsistency. The standard stays unclear. And then when the conversation finally happens, it carries more emotion than it's needed. And so that's what happens when you don't lead the pattern early. So the move really is simple, but it takes honesty. Name the thought. I'm avoiding this because I don't want the discomfort. Then choose the next responsible action. I'm going to have a calm, clear conversation before frustration becomes my tone. That is intentional execution connected to mindset work. You're not just doing the task, you're changing the pattern that kept delaying the task. And so now let's talk about how to protect your energy moving forward. Build rhythms that refill and protect and direct your leadership energy. Those three words are simple, right? Refill, protect, direct. Refill just means that you have to know what actually restores you. Not what distracts you for a few minutes, but what genuinely helps you become clearer and steadier and more present. And so for some people, that's prayer in the morning. For some, it's quiet. For some, it's walking without more noise in their ears. For some, it might be sleep. For some, it's having one honest conversation instead of carrying the weight silently for another week. And so a lot of people, they confuse distraction with restoration. Scrolling might distract you, but it might not restore you. Complaining might release pressure for a moment, but it might not rebuild capacity. And so real restoration gives you back clarity. Protect means you stop giving everything equal access to you. Every message, every request, interruption, problem, and minor issue can't have the same level of access to your clearest energy. You might need to ask, does this need my attention right now? You might need to ask, is this mine to carry or is this mine to clarify? You might need to ask, am I helping or am I training people to keep bringing me what they should really be learning to handle? And so those questions can protect a lot of energy. Direct means that you decide where your best focus needs to go before the day starts spending it for you. A lot of people are active, but they're not directed, right? They're busy, but they're not focused. They're responding all day, but they're not really leading. So directing your energy might be as simple as identifying one leadership priority for the day, one decision, right? One conversation, one follow-up, one action that moves the right thing forward. And so that doesn't mean that you only do one thing all day. It just means that one thing gets protected. And so because of nothing ever gets protected, the most important things usually lose to the immediate things. Success is built through daily decisions, not emotional highs. And so don't try to overhaul your whole entire life by Friday. Pick one rhythm. Maybe it's 10 minutes before your phone gets your attention. Maybe it's choosing one block of time for your clearest work. Maybe it's writing down the one leadership action that needs your best energy before you actually open your inbox. Maybe it's pausing when irritation rises and asking, what story am I telling myself right now? That's mindset mastery in daily leadership, right? You notice the internal pattern before it becomes external behavior. You protect the energy needed for what matters, and then you execute with more clarity. So here's your practical application for this week. Do an energy check. Ask yourself these 3 questions. What needs my best energy this week? What usually drains me before I get to that? And what is one rhythm I need to build so that I can refill, protect, or direct my energy better? Write it down. Don't just think about it. Thoughts that stay loose in your head have a way of getting buried underneath pressure. And so your take-home action is this. Choose one rhythm this week that protects your leadership energy before pressure starts spending it for you. One rhythm, right? Keep it simple. Make it real. Repeat it. And so as we wrap up, protecting your leadership energy is not about avoiding responsibility. It's about being responsible with the capacity required to lead well. You need mental capacity because leadership requires clear thinking. You need emotional capacity because people and problems and pressure and conflict require steadiness. You need spiritual capacity because willpower alone can only carry you so far. And so don't ignore your energy. Lead it. Refill what needs refilling. Protect what needs protecting and direct what needs directing. And when pressure starts rising, pause long enough to ask, am I leading this moment or am I letting this moment lead me? And so that question can bring you back, right? So keep the fire burning by leading yourself earlier this week. Don't wait until you're empty to start paying attention. Small disciplined action changes people faster than occasional motivation. And one steady rhythm can change the way that you show up in your business, your conversations, and your leadership. I'll talk with you next week. Thank you for joining us on another enlightening episode of the Success Mindset Podcast. Remember, you have the power to shape your destiny and create the life that you desire. If you're ready to take action, subscribe to the podcast and never miss an episode. Share it with your friends and your family and help us build a community of like-minded individuals striving for success. Until next time, stay motivated, keep learning, and let's continue to achieve greatness together.